I'm not going to say a single word about the Tennessee Titans record against the Indianapolis Colts because I was a punter, and there's no reason for me to talk about that. With that being said, we did not punt much against the Tennessee Titans, so you probably have no clue who I am to begin.
Look, I'm unstoppable. Forget your defense, nothing but an obstacle. Run it back, switch it up, call it audible. Serving up them Hail Marys till the game over with the showstopper. So hot, you gotta blow on it. I said I'll huff and I'll puff, then I'll pass to my left while I'm looking to my right. Hit him right in the chest. It be looking like magic, better give me the throne. I ain't talking about Patrick, but I rep my home. I'm never at the end of my zone. I'm bad to the bone, eating up these pig skins like they chicharrones, and you a douche cabron. Mira, mira at the mirror on the wall. I'm the greatest of them all. They gon' put me in the hall. Your name is only written in a bathroom stall. Quit your stalling and make a play. My drive too long, pop the clutch, I don't pump the brakes. I know what it takes to gain the muscle, get rugged. These butterfingers be fumbling, squash a scrimmage and rub it in Robitussin. How I give them concussion, they seeing double, they rushing and pass the shovel, the dirt and rubble, I bury them under it. Stay in your huddle and get 10 yards back, never turn your back. I'ma pull your flag, I go full contact, out punch, out kick like a shotgun.
Yeah. We're back. Glad to see you. Just gonna wait for a couple people to come in. As you're coming in, please make sure that you're liking, sharing, and commenting, because we promise you there's a lot going on today. But we have a very, very special guest with us. So yeah, just make sure that you're going ahead, letting us know where you're coming from. You can put your questions in. We'll probably be, well, I'm not gonna say probably. We might be able to get to it. We'll see though. But once again, this is the HorseShoe Mob Podcast. We're bringing you everything Colts, and we slander some teams here and there. Right now, it's preseason, off season, so like I said, we're taking it easy on some teams, except for the Titans because they drafted Will Levis and told us we were going to get him. But that's neither here nor there. So yeah, but before we get to our special guest, I'm going to go ahead and just make sure that we have the guys. So we're going to start off with the silent assassin. The man who, in very little words, will tell you exactly what kind of person you are respectfully. We have with us Austin Cook.
What's up? I'm Austin.
There you go. I love it, Austin. He's a killer, but he's humble. And then we have with us the senior, Josh Senior. Everybody.
What's good, everybody? And I'm just the opposite of Austin. I'll tell you everything. I'll give you all the smoke.
Exactly, because life is about balance,
Yes.
So we'll go from there. And then we have with us somebody who's been on the podcast before. Not only is a friend to the podcast, but contributor on the AFC South Fan Battle podcast. And I have a feeling you're going to start seeing him more on the HorseShoe Mob. We have with us the one and only Uncle Gandhi. That's his handle on Twitter. Before anybody tries to say anything crazy, we have Harish Nukala.
What's up, guys? I'm the wild one of the bunch. Take what Austin and Josh do okay, and I make it great.
See, there you go. And I'm just Chris Jackson. Don't worry about me. So before we go any further, we have to make sure that, for one, we plug the website, www.fanbattlesports.com. That's where you can see all the content, whether it be replays of the podcast. We have the audio on there, and we have articles featuring one of the articles that was just done by Josh Senior today in regards to recent acquisition and some things around it. So make sure that you are visiting www.fanbattlesports.com. And without further ado, let's just get to the lady of the hour, our special guest. She's been on the AFC South Fan Battle with us before, but I feel like we're not giving her just due. She's very respected in multiple, if not all, Colts circles around here. She's the Colts writer for USA Today. Is that correct?
Yeah, Colts Wire. Yeah.
Colts Wire. And see, look, it's even cooler than I could even say that it is. But we have with us the one and only Meghan Hall. Meghan, thank you for gracing us with your presence today, guys. Y'all aren't giving me enough energy, guys. We're gonna thank you, Meghan. Thank you for coming on. We appreciate you. We appreciate you. Exactly.
Listen, I'm here for all this. Gas me up. I love it. I love it. I love it.
See, man, exactly. She even got the For the Shoe T-shirt. Like, I mean, it's just like you can't get more legit than that.
This is like brand new. This is brand new within like the last like 2 weeks or so. So every now and then I try to like add to my collection because I think, I probably should stop wearing the shirts that have like holes in it or things like that because they're my good luck shirts. So yeah, I just was like, you know what? I'm gonna buy some more and add to the collection.
That's all right. I still wear around Ready for Indy shirt that we got a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
The unfortunate Carson Wentz season where I got to come to Indy for the opener and he threw like 85 balls over everyone's head. He probably threw it over the streets.
My condolences to you. My condolences to you.
Oh, that was cool.
Hey, we're not going to talk about what I did, so let's keep it.
No, I'm interested here. You got to say it now. I got to hear this.
Where
Go ahead,
is
Josh? Tell her.
I'm the one out of the bunch that bought a Wentz jersey, and I freaking wear it. So I'm kind of embarrassed. So I'm gonna have to burn it along with the Matt Ryan.
Don't burn it. You already paid for it.
You can't be one of those fans that like, puts the whole video on social media and you're like, you're dead to me. They like burn it. You can't do that. It's a classic now. It's forever enshrined. You gotta do it proper, put it in the frame, put up on the wall, and tell people it's an ancient artifact when they come by and visit. You gotta go with it.
That way when we win the Super Bowl with Anthony Richardson, you can say you were there from the beginning. Make Anthony Richardson to the real one.
That's what
I do have a Brissett jersey as well.
Oh, okay. I'm here for the Jacoby Brissett.
That's fine. That's fine.
I'm here for stability, and then I'll buy another quarterback.
Listen, the last jersey that was purchased was the Leonard jersey on our behalf. And other than that, my wife has just gotten me Colts apparel. She went to Indy last year, and she got me like the Colts like hockey jersey that ties at the top.
Oh, nice. Okay.
But it doesn't have any numbers or names on it. So the thing is, it's completely neutral. So I can just wear it whenever. Like there's no shame behind that.
We probably need to save the what happened to my Shaq Leonard jersey story. I'll save that for another day. It was actually very funny, but very embarrassing, and my wife is not happy about it.
Oh no.
Oh well, you know what? We're gonna just leave that where it is, because when the wife is upset, we probably don't want to know. Well, I want to know, but it's just like you probably shouldn't reiterate it because she could be hovering.
Your idea. So we'll save that for another day.
Gotcha. Okay, we'll save that for the next time Megan comes on.
Perfect.
All right. So we have some comments coming in already. Matt Briggs, the Texans commentator from the last one. Yeah, you know how big of a fan he is. So he said no randomly. I'm not sure why. He had that on his heart. Then he said, "You're welcome to bringing Megan into the circle." It's like, first off, sir, you brought Megan in. But it was the electric personality and the timeless quote from me that let her know that this was a legit operation here. All right.
So you heard that, man. He's giving you no credit whatsoever. He's like, absolutely not. This is my show.
I'm giving him credit, but the thing is, it's just like it's 51-49, and 51 is me. So I mean, listen, I'm not worried about that. All right. All right. And then he says, "Man, about time, the real reason we're watching Megan." And absolutely. She's a writer for USA Today. I mean, I live in the USA like today, but I mean that's as far as we're getting with that. Like,
these are the worst dad jokes. Like, how do you guys let this go?
That really was like
oh no. Listen, I'm not gonna throw out any zingers yet, because the thing is, it's just like that's not what we're doing thus far. Okay. However, I do want to let people know that Sam does love Jalen Ramsey. So without further ado,
gosh,
Megan,
Sam, I'm so sorry. If you're listening to this, if you're watching this, I am so sorry to you.
Yeah, we don't need your signed Jalen Ramsey apparel, by the way. So please don't send it to the show.
No, not at all. Not at all. But yeah, so like I said, you are, as we said before, you are the lady of the hour, and we just, since you're our first time guest, we want the audience to know more about you for those who don't know you. So let us know all about who Meghan Hall is and how she got to be the writer for the Colts Wire for USA Today.
Oh man, you're gonna make me tell my whole life story. Well, I'll give you the shortened version. So I've been a Colts fan for several years. I get a lot of grief because I'm from Texas originally. I'm from Houston, Texas, and my family will tell you I've lost my way. I don't know where my roots are, but I grew up watching the boys, and I decided I didn't want to live with that pain. So I decided to start watching other football, and that other football became Peyton Manning. And, I just love the way that he, of course, he was a sheriff. He's going to command the field. He knows what you're doing before you even do it. Like, loved all of that. So I watched the Colts march to the Super Bowl, and I was hooked since then. So, once Peyton left, I was still here. Once Andrew Luck came in, I was still here, and been here. So I actually picked up writing, last year. So got an opportunity to write for a smaller, well, I don't want to say smaller, I guess it was smaller content at the time, but a fairly large site. It's called Murphy's Multiverse. So they do Marvel, DC, kind of superhero media entertainment writing, but they were dipping into the sports realm. And a buddy of mine was like, "Hey, Meg, you're super knowledgeable. Like, you should come, write with us." So I did, started doing that. And I still write for them, actually. And once I, started with that opportunity, I was doing a daily column on all things NFL, but it was like, a minute read, very, very simple. If you never knew anything about the NFL, you would be able to read my stuff and be like, "Oh, okay, cool. I know what's going on."
Okay.
So had a lot of pop culture references in it, which was really fun to be able to do and add that on with the football twist. That kind of propelled me into an opportunity last year I had with a media company called Stadium Rant. And so I joined there.
Stadium Rant. Okay.
Yeah. So I joined there. I was managing editor for the AFC South sites, and had a staff of 6 underneath me. We started a podcast called Indie Intercept Podcast. That was a fun ride, honestly, really fun ride. Towards the end of that year, we won Podcast of the Year, which was really cool because that was my first time ever doing a podcast or starting a podcast. Also got Managing Editor of the Year, and I was like, "Oh, maybe I might be good at this." Like, maybe I might be a little bit decent. And so I reached out to Kevin Hickey, the managing editor at Colts Wire, and we just kind of introduced myself and was like, "Hey, guy, this is what I do. Would love to write for you guys one day." And he's like, "Okay, cool. I'll keep you in mind." And so he came back to me earlier this year and was like, "Hey, we have some opportunities." So I made the switch from Stadium Rant to USA Today. And that's been a really fun ride, honestly. It's elevated my status, certainly in the Colts circles. It's given me some opportunities, got credentialed for my first event, which was great. Also allowed me to get into an invite-only conference earlier this year called the Black Sports Business Symposium here in Atlanta that's sponsored by ESPN. Phenomenal event. If you like sports, period, doesn't matter, doesn't have to be football. Yeah, that is the event to go to. And so that just basically been riding that wave, from here on out. I would say that I've met a lot of people because of having that USA Today name behind mine. But it gives some legitimacy to, my fandom. I would say I've been ranting from my couch, and now I get to, rant in my own ways in a more controlled form. So do that with USA Today, and also decided to kind of keep my brand going. And so now I have allaboutsports.com along with the matching podcast, All About Sports Podcast. And we're talking football, basketball, baseball, trying to get into hockey and golf. So I sound a little bit more knowledgeable when I'm talking about those sports. So that's been fun too. Just kind of a dip. And that's also a passion project for me. So anything I feel like writing about or see things about, it's going to go on the website and definitely on the podcast too.
Yeah, that's I love the way that you said it's just like, "Oh man, we'll be ranting here forever," and then you condensed it to about 3 minutes.
I tried to give you like the Cliff Notes version,
I'm like, that is just true journalism. But I mean, so how I want to say, like I said, we're all gonna ask some questions, but before we actually get to that segment where we're just basically grilling you a little bit, how has I'm going to say, what has been the uptick that you've seen in terms of, how people reach out, how people react on social media to you now that, it's just like you're more out front as opposed to kind of more behind the scenes where you were prior to being with USA Today?
Yeah, I would say I've gotten a lot more requests for podcasts, definitely, like, how I ended up on here. I will say this, Twitter Spaces has been a really, really, really fun avenue for me. That's really where I like jumped last year to this year. I got invited to a ladies night only space last summer, and it was all women talking football. And that was going on for several weeks. Every Friday night, bunch of ladies in there, talking football, which I loved that because you just don't have you don't have those opportunities in spaces. But what was really fun and nice was that there was a bunch of guys and the listeners, and I got a lot of follows and things like that from there. And the cool thing about it was that, I've been told by several people, it's like, "Hey, I'm not a Colts fan, but I love the way that you explain things. I love the way that you provide context." And so I gave you a follow because she's super knowledgeable. So that was really cool. Like, that gave me again, it gave me a really good confidence boost. Like, okay, yeah, I might know a little bit something. And so I think from there, like, it just gave me the window or the green light to kind of take that knowledge and continue to run with it. So I've tried to provide that perspective in anything that I do. So anything that is podcast or writing, or, if you catch me out somewhere and you're talking to me, I try to make sure I continue to bring that knowledge and that insight.
Awesome. I love to hear that. Love to hear about it. And like I said, we're gonna pick your brain, because we're gonna get everything that and possibly have you slip out some secret information, but that's neither here nor there. But we do want to, like I said, because we want to get your input, like your feedback on some of the things that kind of like is on our mind, but if you get the answers from a fan, then they're just like, oh yeah, we think this, like how there were certain things that were happening, and then people were just like, oh yeah, well, it's this person. It's just like you're like, yeah, no, that's not happening. But yeah, actually, so we all have some questions to ask. So we'll actually we can start off with Josh, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, let's go.
All right, get myself on mute. Hey, Megan, once again.
Hey.
So the question I have is with Brashard Perriman.
Okay.
What, 9-year vet? What are the expectations on him? Is it a camp body, or is it like a veteran guy that's gonna be the veteran presence on the locker room, get the guys, I guess, ready every game? I know we have Reggie Wayne, but what are the expectations with Brashard?
Yeah, I thought this was an interesting signing. In my mind, I think he has a good chance to make the roster, purely because if you go past Perriman, there's not a whole lot of guys with a ton of experience on the roster, especially there's a ton of undrafted free agents. So, and I would suspect that several of those are going to be on the special team side. I think let's say if you're going to go, 5-6 receivers, you're going to go MPJ, Alec Pierce, you're going to go Josh Downs, Isaiah McKenzie, Ashton Doolin probably at 5, and maybe Perriman at 6. That's, 6 healthy, wide receivers. And again, anything past that is like, all right, we're going to get into special teams capabilities. I think at this point, you can't have enough playmakers. And we saw that with this offense last season. There was, this offense, I'll be real honest, this offense was the stuff of nightmares to watch, real time. So in my mind, before the season, I had concerns about lack of experience with the wide receiver group, particularly because Paris Campbell wasn't healthy and hadn't been healthy. He'd only played 15 games up till then. Alec Pierce was a rookie. And then, of course, MPJ, your tight ends were also young too. Mo Alley-Cox was underproducing. Like, there was just a lot happening in that receiving core. So I thought then we would have added a wide receiver, especially because, of course, T.Y. Hilton was not coming back. We did not do that. So to see them continue to add competition, I think he has a good chance to make the roster there. And really, truly, here's the other thing. I'm not quite sure that they've done the necessary work to develop some of those, I guess you could say, bottom of the roster guys. I don't know any other better way to kind of say that. Mike Strawn is a guy who I'm thinking of in particular, really big body wide receiver, 7th rounder. He was super hyped up in preseason, about 2 seasons ago, has dealt with some injuries, but we really haven't seen him get the reps that we thought he was going to get and maybe become a viable part of the receiving core. So the fact that they've gone out and added some veteran presence makes me think that he's probably got a good chance to make the roster, even if I haven't seen the deal yet, but if it's a 1-year deal or something like that, like you can't be mad at that.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Austin, go ahead.
Yeah. So I saw your article on PFF predicting Bernard Raymond as the breakout player for the Colts this year.
Yeah.
But I want to know who you think the breakout player for the Colts would be.
Okay, so my sleeper is Jelani Woods. So I've been a big fan of Jelani. Even really before Drew Ogletree kind of showed him up in camp last year, I had my eyes on Jelani. He's 6'7", 250. That's a big dude, for lack of a better phrase. But also I felt like the Colts criminally underutilized him, and I actually just wrote about this very recently. I think the article came out today, but it was like 5 underrated players for 2023, and folks to keep your name out on. My money's on Jelani Woods. I really think that he could be tight end 1. I think that the fact that Mo Alley-Cox was on the trade block and is still on the trade block potentially, he outproduced Mo in his first year. And that says a lot. He's averaging, what is it, like 14 yards a catch or reception. I think Jelani's got some high upside. It was really disappointing to see him kind of just flash in this season. The best example I can think of that is the Vikings game where he caught this really big 35-yard catch, and that was all you saw from him from the rest of the game. So, when you see those nice little bursts, you're like, okay, yeah, let's go. Like, we need more of this. And then you just didn't see it out of that offense. So I would look for Jelani Woods to kind of have a breakout season. I really do think that he's going to overtake Mo Alley Cox for, tight end 1. To be truthful with you, I think that Mo Alley was kind of just the fall guy because Jack was gone. Once Jack Doyle retired, it was like, okay, hey, he's the only other veteran guy on the roster that we really can, kind of put our faith in. They gave him a deal in 2020. I think that was 2022, March of 2022. That's kind of like a good show of faith. Like, hey, we want to see this from you. And then he didn't really deliver. So I can't really see them, keeping him unless, I'm going to knock on every piece of wood here. But God forbid that you hit injuries again, he might stay longer. But I would not be shocked to see them move on from him and have Jelani be tight end 1.
Awesome. Get him out of there.
Yes. And the one side note, I think, the one thing about Jack Doyle was that his blocking was like super underrated. And Mo came out as just like he showed flashes. Like I remember the Miami game where he was just like big man and everybody. But, in a year like last year where, it's just like you need somebody that can help block because the O-line was atrocious. And I mean, he was still better than Matt Pryor, but he was still just not that great in the blocking. So that probably didn't bode too well for him either.
Yeah, well, there's not really a tight end on the roster that truly has blocking abilities that has played. Like Pharaoh Brown, they just picked him up because of his blocking abilities. Like his offensive production is not going to do anything for you there. I'd be curious to see what they get out of Will Mallory if they decide to put him in a blocking situation. He's a super athletic tight end with a bigger body, maybe there, but I mean, there's been no one else on the roster who's really going to block. I mean, not even Jelani. I mean, Jelani's massive, but not in a blocking situation. Like, that's not his bread and butter. So I'd be curious to see how they remedy that. They still haven't found an answer, in my opinion.
Yeah.
No, I think they're hoping that Will Mallory is that guy. I mean, they kind of took a flyer on him, if you will, but he's got the blocking body, I guess you could say. But is he going to be able to do the other piece that they probably want in a full scale tight end? I don't know. I don't think they have the answer to that, and I don't think we've even really heard too much about Will Mallory from any perspective. I don't know if you've seen him or his participancy or anything on that, because I don't think we've heard anything about him.
No, the only thing that has been heard is, he's got a little bit of a foot injury going on right now. These are all minor tweaks, like, right. Like I wouldn't worry or things like that, but it's interesting because I've been having conversations about how the Colts are going to use Will Mallory, because that pick, I think that one and the Titus Leo pick can like confuse people a lot because they're like, why? Yeah. Where is he going to fit? What are you going to have him do? So I think you have to keep this in mind. Ballard loves his athletes. So just about every pick, and this is hard to do with 12 picks, but just nearly about every pick had a 9.0 average, RAS score. So that's freak athletes all over the draft. So when you see Will Mallory, who basically had the best numbers out of any tight end, and he's still sitting there, yeah, you're going to go grab him. I mean, it's a luxury pick, I think, but it also is a place where you could help if you suspect that Will Mallory has the blocking abilities to be able to kind of fit that mold, what they're looking for.
Yeah.
Gotcha. All right. Thank you for that. Harish, go ahead.
Speaking of roster building and roster builder Chris Ballard is, because I agree, he's absolutely horrendous. Last week you talked about this, Ballard's roster creation skills are lackluster. They're terrible, if you will. It's still early in the offseason, but what differences have you known in his roster building skills this year versus the lack of them in previous years? Have they changed? Are they the same? What have you noticed?
I would say that he definitely was active early in free agency. Like that was a change for him. Like, cause usually the Colts are really quiet for the first 3 to 4 weeks, and fans usually lose their minds because they're like, all these players are flying off the board, so to speak. And the Colts haven't signed anyone. He definitely put some money behind a kicker, and everyone, like, for lack of a better word, they freaked out because they were like, oh my gosh, why would you give a kicker $22 million? Like, what's happening? But you got to realize and think that they've been actually having kicking woes since Adam Vinatieri was here. And if you really pay attention to it, then like this was coming. I remember very vividly. This was probably 2019. I went to a Colts Falcons game in Indy, and I remember watching Benny miss field goals in warmups and thinking, "Oh my gosh, like you're gonna have to hold your breath all game." And he hit a field goal during the game, and it doinked off the post and in, and collectively the whole crowd was like, "Oh!" And that's when I knew then, like, we were in trouble. I'm like, we have kept Benny too long. Like, he's phenomenal, but we have kept him too long. And I think since then they've been trying to find the answer. So you hope that Matt Gay is the answer there. I would say outside of that, there's really not anything that I saw that was like, earth shattering from him. I think the fact that he didn't have to go out and spend a lot of money to, replace Yannick Ngakoue is solid. I think you didn't get what you were looking out of him for the money that they spent on Ngakoue. You only get 9 sacks out of him. It's still below his career best of 12. He was second on the team in pressures to DeForest Buckner with, I think he had 43 and Buckner had 51 from the D tackle spot, which is crazy. So it's there wasn't anything that I thought like outwardly moved the needle. I thought there were some pretty, solid pickups there. Ibukum was definitely one there. McKenzie was another who I was like, okay, cool. There's your Paris Campbell replacement, but there was really nothing that I screamed, okay, this is a great move. I'll say this, the two that actually shocked me in terms of him keeping them was Kenny Moore and Ryan Kelly. Because I thought both of them had ship sailed, like you got to go. But I'll say this, character goes a long way. And we know that Chris Ballard's very high on good character. So I think that was one thing. The other thing is, in hindsight, not shipping Kenny Moore is probably a really smart decision right now, given the news of the last several days. Ryan Kelly also, I think, is a centerpiece, even though Kelly hasn't played up to his par, for the last couple seasons. You don't have a whole lot of depth behind Kelly if you let him go. Maybe Penter, steps in or whatever else. But beyond that, there's not a whole lot there. So I understand why you kept him as well. And I think those are my two, like, oh, okay, all right. I thought, hey, for sure they were gone. But I would also say keep your eyes open because, if the play doesn't improve, they could be gone, in a trade.
Yeah. I think that the speculation for I'm going to say this whole offseason was that one of them was going to go.
Yeah.
And I think we all just got to a point where we're just like, okay, we saw Ryan Kelly took like a step back. And I think, it's one thing that we've seen is that, even though Ryan Kelly wasn't playing that well, we know that, things had happened recently. So I think the fan base, because of how close the fan base is to knowing exactly how these people are seeing what, the Kelly family went through, they were just kind of like, we may need him to go, even though everybody's just not like, okay, this guy stinks like, everybody was with Matt Pryor because he stunk. So yeah, like it was, so what, we saw the progressions and everything. I think even Kenny was very surprising with how bad, he really played. Cause I mean, he'd been the most consistent through all these years. And you would think that getting Gilmore, he'd be able to still remain consistent. So
I really think that him kind of coming in and saying, hey, I am the best slot corner in the league. I also want to be paid like one of the top corners in the league. Like that was great, but then he didn't back it up and it didn't help him at all. So to me that like keeping Kenny was like, hey, we're going to do you a solid because we like you. Honestly, right. I think that Chris Ballard would have been like, yeah, wash my hands. But I think he also said something that I thought was very interesting is that he said we didn't get the offers that we were looking for. So which tells me that, yeah, we were looking, we were shopping, but we just didn't get back the value. So that's why I always say like, keep your eyes open for things like that.
But it's crazy because what were you looking for when you traded Gilmore for a fifth?
I mean, that was honestly, you're not going to, even though Gilmore still plays at a high level, he's an older quarterback and you're not going to get, a first round pick or even a second round pick for Gilmore. If you had gotten a third for him, like I would have been like, hey, I'm going down to West 56th Street now, like to thank you in person. So, I think that's that's pretty solid. A 5th round pick, is solid. And Dallas gets, a corner they desperately needed, and you get some capital back. But yeah, anything beyond that, I mean, I would think that I would assume you probably are going to want, 1 to 2 picks for Kenny Moore, and probably a pick or 2, I would think, for Ryan Kelly. But yeah, it's possible that they didn't garner that because play was not up to par. So
exactly.
I feel I'm still in the boat, and I'm still trying to get through this in my mind of Ballard cheated us and bought himself 3 extra years with the my time clock doesn't start until I draft a quarterback. I can't seem to get that quote out of my mind, and now I feel like I'm screwed for another 3 or 4 years of more recycle bin players, because that's where we are right now. I
mean, I will say this. At this point, you knew that Ballard was staying regardless of what he did in this draft.
Yes.
Jim Irsay all but solidified that in the Jeff Saturday conference. He basically, like, the quote where he compares him to Michael Jordan and everything else, and it basically was like, listen, I know what you guys say about him, but I know who my guy is. Like, that right there told you, like, yeah, he's at least got 1 to 2 more years grace with me. But I think this also, the organization is starting to feel the pressure, right? Like, and you saw that if you watch like the behind the scenes and things like that, there's some heavy tension in the organization about getting this right, the need to be right, the need to make sure that this is the pick for the organization. So, I mean, I've said this and I've been saying this. Jim Irsay can say what he wants, but he also told us Frank Reich was safe, and Reich was fired the next week. So, take it all with a grain of salt. Like, take it all with a grain of salt. If this year turns out to be another horrendous year, and not even that, like, hey, you expect the Colts to win a bunch of games, but let's say they just aren't even competitive in games, I could see Chris Ballard being gone. That would be 7 seasons and nothing to show for it. Really and truly, not a whole lot of quote unquote playoff wins or not even an AFC division title. Yeah, you got to go.
Yeah, I agree. I said the same thing.
Yes.
So I had a question for you, but I think you kind of answered that one. So I'm just going to have to freestyle this one.
Go for it.
So from what you've seen thus far, I know that they've been very hush hush, like Area 51 secret about OTAs and everything. But is there anything that you've seen that indicates that this team is further ahead than they would like us all to believe? Because everybody's saying that it's just like, okay, you got to bring them along slowly. Anthony Richardson, like they're basically doing it like they're trying to train him to be a velociraptor or something. Yeah. And we're trying to figure it out. But like, is there any indication that we know that, or that will make you think like, oh wait, they're trying to pull the wool over everybody's eyes?
Basically, what Chris wants to know is Anthony Richardson going to be Andrew Luck tomorrow?
Yeah, that's kind of what I got. No, I will say this. And the reason why is you got to remember, again, we're going to go back to this quote, the need to get it right. Right. Mm-hmm. And I think that stuck out in my mind for a couple of reasons. Chris Ballard has had a long leash in his 6 years, right? A really long leash. So now it's about getting it right because you've run out of leash now. The other thing is Richardson can only go as far as the growth trajectory path that you put in front of him. So, and I say that from the fact of they brought in 9 new faces on this offense, on the staff, and mainly on the offensive side of the ball. You bring in Shane Steichen, who is a quarterback guru, right? Yeah. You bring in Cam Turner, who can help support. You bring in Bob Cooter, who can help with concepts and things like that. All of this was to support whoever this rookie quarterback was going to be. The plan was always going to be to bring them along slowly, right? You're installing a new scheme. You're installing a new staff. This is essentially a new team. And I know people don't want to think about it that way because, the Colts aren't in a rebuild. Yeah, they kind of are. You've kept the core of the defense. Like, that's not the issue, but you've got pretty much a brand new identity on offense. And it's being run through a rookie quarterback. So even I think if the Colts had drafted, we'll say Bryce Young, for example, who was my QB1, I think it still would have been the same. We still would have, hey, we're going to cherry pick what we give to you and let you, show us that you're ready or things like that. The other thing is Richardson doesn't have enough experience for us to rush the process. So you've got 13 games and he needs reps and reps and reps and more reps and patience. So in order to do that, you've got to put him along very slowly. Now, I do think it's a really good sign that you saw out of OTAs. He's splitting reps at times with Gardner Minshew and able to run the offense, pretty well. He's doing about how you expect. He's got, some great on the money throws and of course some things that he's got to clean up. But the one things that his teammates have said, of course, and that has come out of Cam Turner as well, is that the guy's a perfectionist. So even things that are right, he's wanted to go back and do again because he's like, I didn't get it just the way that it needs to be. The ball could have been thrown, well, but he's got to make sure he puts it on the spot, on the money. I think those are the things that you want to see out of your quarterback. Now, and I'll say this. Everyone's going to do it anyways, and I'm telling you not to, but it's, it's like telling you not to breathe. He cannot be Andrew Luck, and I don't want him to be Andrew Luck.
Oh, no, absolutely not.
He's got to be Anthony Richardson, right?
Yeah.
He can only be Anthony Richardson. He can't be Peyton Manning. He can't be anybody else but Anthony Richardson. And so with that in mind, this is where I tell fans, like, you got to be patient. Like, I know if I take off, my writer hat, my analyst hat, I'm like, yes, I'm ready to go. Like, and I've talked to other fans who are like, you know what? I bought season tickets because once we drafted Anthony Richardson, like I finished buying my season tickets because I need excitement. I need things to happen. And I get it. Everyone's so excited, but patience is necessary. And the thing is, like, he may not even be great this year. Like, the things that we saw from Andrew Luck were an anomaly. 10 plus wins in your first season as a rookie typically does not happen, right? It's not one of those things that is like, oh, we do that all the time. That's no biggie. That's not what's happening here. Much less Andrew Luck is not walking through that door to kind of smooth over these terrible roster decisions that you've made and cover up some holes from Brian Grigson. So what is happening there is that you got a roster who has basically been exposed now, right? It's been fully exposed for what it is. And you got a rookie quarterback who's trying to step in and learn. So patience, of course, reps, and time. And when you put those all together, we can start talking about, speeding up things once we get past preseason. Is he going to be the starter? Things like that. Those are the things that those questions will start coming. But for now, I would not think, and by all accounts from what I've seen, no, they were not rushing him along by any sort of standards. So sorry to break any hearts, but what you're seeing is true.
Yeah, you didn't break my heart. Harish is trying to give me hell right now because we have these quarterback talks all the time.
The 5-year plan is not the 5-month plan, Chris. I'm sorry.
Hey, whoa. First off, I'm not going to take this from the same person who's trying to sell me on bringing in Sam Darnold a couple years ago.
Sam Darnold, Carson Wentz, what's the difference?
No, we're not doing this. We're not doing this.
Austin, you let this happen? You let them try to convince folks to bring in Sam Darnold?
I'm pretty sure Austin commented under there. It's just like, well, that doesn't seem like a good move.
Austin's so quiet because I feel like he's silently judging this whole conversation about Sam Darnold. That's okay.
We tell him this all the time.
Listen, Frank Reich was the QB whisperer. Everybody thought he was except for me, but
he was the QB whisperer like Will Ferrell was on SNL, where it's just like the guy who was screaming in everybody's ears. Like, oh, that's not who that is.
I think that's
but so going from a slow process to somebody just trying to get the money quick. Isaiah Rodgers got caught betting on games.
Jesus.
This is so
come on, man. Why did you do the Colts future Hall of Fame cornerback like that, man?
Well, he would have been a Hall of Fame cornerback if he wasn't betting on being in the Hall of Fame. But this is so news came out yesterday. I'm gonna say randomly in the afternoon that there was a Colts player who's not a superstar but was a star that with a recognizable name had been caught betting. Immediately, Colts fan base went into a frenzy. People started putting names out there. I think Michael Pittman Jr. was the first name to come out. I'm not exactly sure why.
It was a fake Adam Schefter account tweeted it out, and of course people didn't look that there was like 6 R's in the Adam Schefter.
It was Adam Schefter.
Yeah, they just ran with it or whatever else, and that's how things get started. Is people start making all these assumptions, and they don't wait for the things to come out because hey, we live in I gotta have it now, sort of society. So yes, that's where it came from.
Yeah, so like I said, everybody was speculating. I think it took maybe about an hour for it to come out that it actually was Isaiah Rodgers. They said that he had been betting and that he possibly placed over 100 plus bets. But I know Megan, I know that you tweeted out at one point that you may have known, but you weren't going to say anything because of your journalistic integrity, and we appreciate that about you. But like, let us know exactly like how that process like just came down, at least from your eyes, because from us watching it on Twitter, we're just like, what the hell's happening everywhere?
So it's a couple things here. So first of all, let me shout out Destin Adams, who's the one who broke that first.
Yes,
that's my guy, Destin Adams. If you're not following him, please go do that on Twitter. Destin is phenomenal. He and Chad, and the whole entire crew at SI. But the thing is, like, if you've been paying attention, the NFL has been cracking down on, on gambling and betting. Albert Breer released an article today as well that basically said, like, hey, Isaiah Rodgers is not the only one the NFL is investigating. There's several other players who are going to be potentially involved and might be named at a later date. So those are the things to keep in mind. Now, where this gets very interesting is because this is all allegedly at this point, right? And I want to put that out. And this is an alleged sort of thing.
Allegedly.
So this is an implication of potential bets happening. So the report is that, hey, there's an investigation happening. We believe that there have been bets placed on an associate's account. This is approximately 100 bets, anywhere from $25 up to $50. And then potentially there's a low 4-figure bet as well. So, maybe something in the $1,000 range or something of that nature. Now, the confirmation is that, the confirmation is that, yes, there was betting on NFL games, but also on Colts games. Now, what the nature of the Colts games, I can't tell you that. I don't have that information. But where this gets very, 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 very interesting is what do the Colts do in this situation? 2, what sort of punishment is the NFL going to levy depending on what his actions were? So if it comes back and they say, oh, okay, yeah, he bet against the Colts. Okay, all right. Well, maybe that's, that's a little bit different conversation we're having, right? Like this might be a lifetime ban sort of thing if you're betting against the Colts, because now you're compromising the integrity of the game. If it's a Calvin Ridley situation where you're betting for your team, like what they did with the Falcons, then maybe you might be talking about, a 1 to 2 year, maybe even a 3 year sort of quote unquote ban, and you can apply for reinstatement. The other thing to think about here is that this is a new territory. So there's really not a precedent set that says, hey, if you bet this is how many games you have. If you bet this is how many games you had. You saw Calvin Ridley's suspension was lengthy for just for what you assume is 1 to 2 bets potentially. Like it's pretty lengthy. So to think potentially 100 plus, this could easily be a lifetime ban. And that's really rough for a player that young and a player in general, because that's your livelihood right there. I think the larger thing to also think about is a main reason I didn't say anything yesterday either is because we want to let the facts come out. This is an active investigation, so you're not going to see too many folks, myself included, anyone in the Colts beat is not going to say, this is what I know. Now we can do certain things, but I could show you my mentions from yesterday. Who do you think it is? And do you think it's this guy? And I'm like, I see you in my mentions, but I'm definitely not answering here. And I think the other thing is fans definitely just want to like kind of understand like what's going on with their team, right? Because it seemed quote unquote random when it just it comes in a 4:00 news dump and you're like, what is happening? Like I was telling you guys before the podcast, my phone had been a zoo since before, like before the news even officially dropped that it was, that it was Isaiah Rodgers or potentially Isaiah Rodgers. And, questions, Meg, what do you know? Meg, tell us what you know, and those sorts of things. Or have you seen your tweets and that sort of thing? Because people were, again, wanting to know. I think the other thing, and I'm going to dispel this as well because I've seen it. No, the Colts did not know. This is they're finding out as you're kind of finding out, right?
Yeah.
So there was a comment made, I think it was, or maybe several people that made comments about, well, they drafted 3 corners, and they had to have known. Have you seen the Colts cornerback room? Because I just want to confirm with you if you have, because it was pretty thin on the veteran presence prior to the draft, right? Like that was the big issues. Like corner was definitely going to happen because Stephon Gilmore went to Dallas and Brendan Facyson went back to Las Vegas. So at that point, I know how a lot of fans feel about Brendan Facyson. But at that point, you had Tony Brown and Dallas Flowers as your other quote unquote veteran guys and a bunch of other special teamers. So, and really Dallas Flowers and Tony Brown are your emergency cornerbacks and they play special teams as well. So you really didn't have a whole lot. So it made sense that they were at least going to draft 1, maybe even 2, but 3 basically said, hey, we don't have a whole lot of folks and we need depth and we've been dealing with some injuries. So that's all really that I wanted to kind of just clarify that. But beyond that, I mean, this is unfolding in real time. It will continue to be, unfolded in real time. I think the larger question, and maybe we'll get into it as well if you guys want to discuss that, but what's the impact on the defense and, how does the team respond from here on out?
Yeah. You know what? I'm glad you said that because, how does the loss of Rodgers Sr. change the defensive approach?
Yeah, she's really good. She's really good. Yes.
I love. It's just like Iron Man 3. It's just
I don't write the questions anymore.
Hey, I try. I do what I can. But yeah, so one of the things that I immediately thought about is who steps up to play alongside Kenny Moore. I would think that Juju Brents makes a really strong case to step aside. Maybe you even, if you decide that you don't want to sign a veteran cornerback, you roll with your rookie guys, then I would probably say Darius Rush is probably your next likely guy to step up. And then Jalen Jones is probably depth at that point. But that's going to mean that you're going to need a lot of work from Kenny Moore to essentially shine and be that not only elite player that he was, but also be the mentor in that cornerback room because everybody's young and everybody's inexperienced. I think if I remember seeing correctly yesterday, like the next closest person to have played games is Dallas Flowers, and he's played 13 games and he's had one start. So it's not real pretty after that. So I would think that you're going to have to lean very heavily on your rookie guys. And then again, express patience to your fan base that like, hey, you're going to see them make some mistakes. You're going to see them, learn on, so to speak, on the fly, and go from there. I would be curious how Gus Bradley gets creative in utilizing them. That's where I would start there, for those young guys.
One thing that I was thinking somebody that might be really good to come in that we can sign from the recycling bin is Byron Jones.
Okay. All right.
I was thinking Byron Jones. And maybe this is where you can come in and keep us honest here. I think in the secondary, there's maybe a lot of zone concepts that are run. Byron Jones is a zone guy. He wasn't very successful in Miami because they do more man concepts. So I'm thinking, Byron Jones is kind of a perfect fit. He's not too old. He's only 30. Right? Yeah. 29 going into 30. So I was thinking Byron Jones is somebody that can come in and not just be that veteran impact because, again, I'm the anti-Ballard now, so I have no faith in Kenny Moore. I've seen enough of Kenny Moore. I have no faith in him. So I do think somebody like a Byron Jones can be that guy that can come in and produce and also be that veteran leadership.
Yeah, that's a solid point because one of the reasons why Kenny Moore suffered so badly, I think last season was that, it's a lot of zone concepts and that's not his thing. Kenny Moore's a man corner. What he's able to do is to come off of his man, hit people in the box. He's putting those extra pressure there. He's breaking up balls. He's intercepting balls because he's man to man. He wasn't able to do that, and he's dealing with some injuries. So it just was like a snowball effect. So if you're able to get Kenny in maybe a little bit more man-to-man situations. I won't say completely because you're going to change Gus Bradley's defense there, but at a little bit more man-to-man situations, then he'll probably thrive there. As far as zone concepts, Byron fits right in there. He was on the short list of guys, and I was like, all right, if you can get him in here for cheap, like roll with it. Not that I think this is going to happen, but Marcus Peters is the other name that's been thrown around. I don't know. I think Peters is going to want more money than Ballard is going to be wanting to give. But at this stage in his career, I would be curious if he wants to come to also the Colts because maybe he wants to go to contender. I mean, heck, I don't know, but I'm throwing out the names that make sense because the free agent cornerback market is very small at this point. And especially for guys that are one, not going to come with a hefty price tag and two, going to make sense for your defense. The options are very, very slim. And I believe I might be understanding, but I know Cody Manning on our staff has been looking at that as well. So I think he's got an article coming out that will discuss all of that. So be on the lookout for that. Okay. But yeah, that's my immediate thoughts. If they're even gonna go bring a veteran guy in, which I think they should, but this is Chris Ballard we're talking about. Like he could be like, nope, I like my guys, and we're gonna roll.
These are my guys. We believe in what we have. Cornerback.
Really I was going to say.
Yeah.
I was gonna say if you remember what he said about the wide receivers, like it would not shock you that he was gonna roll with all the rookies at corner. So
yeah, exactly. So you know what? So we've talked kind of like on the personnel side of things with this whole situation, but kind of I'm gonna say pivoting back to the league now because it's just like you had Calvin Ridley last year, you had Jameson Williams in the offseason along with a bunch of other Lions players. Now you have Isaiah Rodgers, and they're speculating that there's more people involved in other organizations. So, with this most recent situation, where does the league go from here, and what does this mean for the league as a whole?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it makes it a very tricky sort of position because the league has active partnerships with gambling sites, with betting sites. I mean, heck, you've got that sort of name on the side of the Superdome. So,
exactly.
So it's kind of like we get our monies from there, but you can't do this, like, that sort of thing.
Exactly.
And it makes it a really fine line that the league has to walk. To be honest with you, I don't know how the league is going to handle this going forward. Like, obviously they're going to come through and say, yep, these are all the guys that we have found. But here's the issue that I've had with the league in previous situations, and not even just with betting. In general, they've had very inconsistent suspensions laid down for lots of things. And this is an extreme, but you've seen it before where guys have violated the league's conduct policy, and 1 game for one guy, 6 games for another guy for similar sort of infractions, and you're like, wait a minute, hold on, what changed here? And so I think there hasn't been consistency. So this is where, again, I point back to like what's the threshold? Like, is it if I place 1 bet, I get immediately a year? If I place 10 bets, is it 2 years? Like that hasn't really been shared, or the light hasn't been shed on that. So I'd be curious to see what they figure out there. But I do think that, like, at some point they're gonna have to look themselves in the mirror and say, okay, we got to figure out, how to operate here, because this is drawing in a significant amount of revenue, and players obviously are clearly, invested. Another thing is, I mean, betting is a $13 billion industry. Like, there's a lot of money in that realm.
Yes.
And it's hard for a big organization like the NFL to just be like, oh, no, we don't want that money. So of course players are going to be like, well, if I can make money, outside of it, sure. And I in my mind, I've been trying to rationalize like why a player would make bets when you're making way more money on the field than you are in bets. And I think a lot of it has to do with, hey, interest, and it's fun and things like that. Much of what, a lot of fans do as well, because it's fun and hey, I can make quick cash and things like that. But I think at this rate, like, players are well aware of what they're doing when they step into this world and the consequences that come with it. And so I think that in this instance, it's 2 things. The league has to be honest about where they're going, and players have to be honest about, where they're going as well.
Yeah.
And I think, you saw that with Isaiah Rodgers yesterday. He didn't necessarily admit to guilt, but he admitted to, like, hey, I've messed up, essentially, I'll take full responsibility and carry on. So this is him looking in the mirror and say, okay, yep, I know, whatever it is that, that he has done, whatever they confirm, is wrong here, and I'm going to rectify it. But this makes it tougher and tougher when you start seeing more and more of these situations coming up. You really wonder, like, what the league sending, could be sending mixed messages, by, of course, having these partnerships and then saying no, but our players can't be involved.
So I think I saw this, and maybe you can confirm this. There is a league-wide gambling policy. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And I think inside of that policy, it mentions that players do have the ability to gamble, except for within the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, there's ways to work around that. The biggest thing is being in the facilities. You cannot be in team facilities and placing bets. And that's usually what gets people caught up, because where are you 90% of the time? You're at the team facilities.
Sure.
And I think what makes it interesting in the Isaiah Rodgers case is the potential use of an associate's account. So one of the things I was pointing out to someone yesterday was that somewhere in this investigation, they've connected the dots back to Isaiah Rodgers. And so I think that, that's the part of the story that I don't have, and that even if I did, I wouldn't be able to share with you guys. But
fair.
But my point in saying that is that even when you think you found some sort of loophole, like you're in a fishbowl effect, right? And I've talked about this before, is that when you step into any professional league, any position of power, any position of influence, you're in a fishbowl.
Yep.
Everything you see and do can be found.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So this is one of those things where, like, if you're doing things in the dark, they're definitely going to come to light. And also, of course, because you have your name, tied to organizations and things like that, like organizations can find out, NFL can find out, and I always go underneath the guise of like, hey, if I wouldn't want it blasted on, the front page news, or if I wouldn't want my mother to, to know about it, like I'm probably not going to do it. And that's one of the things that I think it helps to keep in perspective for, these young guys, even these veteran players as well. Like, you're in a professional sport, and your name, your likeness, everything is being looked at all times. So that's important to keep that in front of you. And I'll be really honest with you. I don't think Isaiah Rodgers is a bad person at all, or things like that. No. I know fans are like going crazy on Twitter and Facebook and all these sorts of comments, things like that. Heaven forbid if you've ever made a mistake in your life. Like, I hope that it's not on the internet for everyone to comment on. And we've all done that, right? We've all made mistakes that we're like, wish I wouldn't have did that, those sort of things. Yep. So I pray in this instance, like whatever the final result is, that, Isaiah is able to come to some sort of like, hey, acceptance, peace, work towards being, better, those sorts of things. I'm never going to kick someone, while they're down or things like that. I do. And I respect the rules and respect, hey, policies or things like that. So certainly I'm on that side, but I'm also on the human side too, is that, I've made mistakes in my life that, yes, I would not want, again, put on social media for everyone and their, and their mother and cousin to comment on and give their 2 cents about what sort of person they think I am. It's not really fair in that regard. And I think at the end of the day, Isaiah has been a very, very valuable piece of the organization. Lots of fans love him for how involved he's been with the team. His teammates speak extremely highly of him. So that's the things that you want to see going forward.
Yeah, and I think that's, you even with me kind of like saying it jokingly, Isaiah Rodgers is probably a name that, we've said a lot on this podcast over the last few years, because of the fact that, it's just like he's absolutely been an impactful player. And, the one thing that we've seen, out of him is that, he went from, getting those flashes in the 2021 season to last season, being replaced by Brandon Facison somehow, and then just coming in and, making the most of it. I think it's just like the way that, he tackled on the edge, Derrick Henry, keeping him from getting a touchdown, the way that he got a touchdown on, the guy. And then, the way that he covered Devontae Adams almost to a T when we played the Raiders, like, he made the most of those opportunities. And it absolutely is a sad situation, but, the one thing that you want to do is, it's just like, before we hear anything, like they say that the speculation was, 100 bets. But, until there's something informal that comes out, you absolutely want the best for him, because, it's not like this is somebody, going out and harming people or doing something along those lines. If it was just betting, then, it's just betting, but hopefully it's not him. I think that he probably has a lot more integrity than to, play a certain way in game to affect the bet, because then you're talking about something that's very, very different.
Yeah. If one of the things I saw yesterday was people talking about, potentially, what types of bets he was making and things like that. And that's where I was like, okay, I think we're too in the weeds here now, because now you're talking about things that like I completely have no sort of impact now on, what's going to happen. Like, regardless, the bets were made or potentially made, at this point. And you kind of have to deal with the consequences and things like that. So I think at this point, it's now of, okay, if you feel like, potentially that you won't have, Isaiah Rodgers, where do you go from here? How do you respond as a team? What do you do as a defensive coordinator, and go from there? And the thing is, listen, fans are going to be upset and heated and passionate now, but when the season comes, like, there'll be way more other things to focus on. Like, you got a defense that finished the season 11th in the league, which is still really good. You've got a young offense, right? That is going to need to find its identity. Like, there's a lot of things to focus on than for, you to be ranting into the abyss about, potential bets that, a player could have made.
Absolutely.
And again, I guarantee you that other teams are like, yep, you got to have a short memory in this league if you want to continue to go on, and continue to make some noise, especially for the Colts, who have some ground to make up in the AFC South.
Yeah. And I think it was mentioned last night. They said that this would be a great time for the Colts to drop an Anthony Richardson highlight from OTAs, because then everybody might just forget about it completely.
Well, and that's my point, is that, like, yes, I mean, if you're like me, where you're constantly writing about these things, you're constantly researching and things like that, and having to create content about it, like, of course, like, it's going to be on our minds, right? But fans, you'd be shocked. Fans have a really short memory. The first time that Richardson throws a touchdown, first time that this defense, picks off someone or something like that, like, kind of goes out the window. You know what I mean? Like, you adjust. You know that this is your new normal now, and you adjust. So, I mean, it's going to be fine. Football is here, and that's what most people are wanting anyways. They're just wanting some sort of action. So,
I think this one's rough, because Isaiah Rodgers is what you would call, quote unquote, a fan favorite if we had one.
Of course, yeah.
I would definitely categorize him as a fan favorite.
I mean, but also keep this in mind. Colts fans, they get really attached to players. Like, I'll give you a name that's probably gonna, like, throw you. Griff Whalen is a guy that that Colts fans, exactly. If you remember Griff Whalen, smaller wide receiver with really good hands, like, they loved Griff Whalen. So when he was in the play that shall not be named, it was like, why would you do that to Griff? And we love this guy. And when he was no longer Colt, I mean, you would have thought that they said, like, hey, we cut 10 players today. Like, that's how dramatic it was for Griff Whalen. And that's when I knew. I was like, oh, this is, like, deep. Like, once they like someone, like, they are all in. So, and I get it. I do. There was a lot of, like, again, a lot of big reactions yesterday to the news and things like that, which, again, I get. But I also am like, there are other folks on this roster who can help, who can step up, who can, come into this spotlight. You just drafted three corners in one draft, and there's a good chance, if you don't sign a veteran, that an undrafted free agent will likely make the roster as well. Like, you got lots of things, to help here.
Yeah, lots of opportunity. So, and so I know that we said that we were only going to be on here for a little while, but I appreciate you being here. I think I want to talk about the schedule a little bit, or get your perspective on the schedule a little bit.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and pull up. We actually picked James Boyd's brain. By the way, shout out to James Boyd as well.
Love
for coming
James.
on last week.
Yeah.
Yes. We talked about basketball like you suggested, and he did not disappoint.
What did I say?
Yes, you know what, you're goated. You're getting to that GOAT level already.
Well, before we get to the schedule, Megan, can you do us a favor, a solid?
Yeah, go for it.
Do an article on Derrick Henry doing place and bets, so he can be suspended for a year. So RJ can go crazy.
Are you talking about RJ Ellison, that guy?
Yes, RJ. Yes.
So I had RJ on Hall About Sports podcast a couple weeks ago, and this was right after the draft, and getting his thoughts or whatever else. First of all, that dude's a character. He's hilarious.
We know.
Oh yeah. We've only been dealing with him for like half a decade now.
Okay, but yeah, complete character. I'm in a group chat with him and a bunch of other AFC South fans and things like that. And yeah, I think he regularly gets cooked in that group chat because he's a Titans fan. And he like, I will say this, he does not lack confidence. He will go toe to toe with anybody in the group chat. So shout out to RJ. He's a real good dude. So
Yeah,
but yeah, he might not like me if I write something like that, and neither would I, because then I've been making things up. So
Yeah. So you know what? We're gonna get to some comments, and then we'll go ahead and get to there. But VT, otherwise known as Brown Chubby. Listen, man, this is I like. You know what? He says Pharaoh Brown is a penalty queen. So glad the Texans don't have to deal with him anymore.
I forgot about him too.
Says the guy whose team now signed Robert Woods for whatever reason. So,
I mean, they need wide receivers.
Yes, and then they said Isaiah Rodgers 2024 XFL Defensive Player of the Year.
Oh my gosh,
you guys are awful. If you bet on the Colts to lose, he'll never see a field again. Will Rush says probably be Darius Rush. He was running routes for the wide receivers in coverage, looking comfortable, I thought.
Okay.
And then 2002K Ferguson says Bargain Bin Ballard. Yeah. Aptly known. So, yes.
Well, and fun fact, Darius Rush used to be a wide receiver. So, there's that.
Oh, well, yeah. Then in that case, then hello there. So last week, we went through weeks 1 through 8. Okay. So somehow Josh Austin and I all predicted us being 5-3 halfway through the season, and James predicted 3-5 through the halfway point of the season. Mm-hmm. So now you have the other half, and
no
from
pressure.
the way that you just said, I don't think I'm gonna like exactly what you have to say about it. It was one of those. Oh yeah, no, this is gonna get worse before it gets better. So, but yeah, so we have week 9 at Carolina.
Yep.
Week 10 at New England. Week 11 the bye. We don't have a bye week 14 again this year, so thank God for that. Then we have home versus Tampa Bay, at Tennessee, at Cincinnati, home versus the Steelers, at Atlanta. We're going to be home versus the Raiders and home versus the Texans. Okay. So with those 9 games, what you got?
So yeah, I would say probably 3 more wins out of those 9 games. So my prediction for the season was 6 to 8 wins is a really solid season in terms of, building. So you won 4 games last year. Now keep in mind, Matt Ryan won you all 4 of those games last year. Do with that information what you will. But but he won you all 4 of those games last year. So if you even get solid play out of the offensive line, I think you can win 4 games. Now, where there might be some questions about how many games you win past that is because of the youth of the offense. So I'm not very high on the youth of the offense, and I think you're going to need time. Also, a rookie quarterback also makes it a little tougher. I get that everyone's super excited about Richardson and the crazy athleticism and, what he brings to the offense, and Shane Steichen being able to be, kind of a mad scientist and cooking up this kind of, Jalen Hurts style offense, if you will. But I would caution that because the Colts still, have some ways to go in terms of winning games. The Steelers still have their number. Let's start there. I can't even remember the last time that the Colts beat the Steelers. And I think the most vivid memory I have is that time that Ben Roethlisberger threw 6 touchdowns and like 500 yards. And I still have not gotten over that. So, and Kenny Pickett tore apart this team last year. Joe Montana, so to speak, is how he looked out there. So do that information with you will. I think beyond that, I could see you picking up a win. And this is just me being really biased because my husband's a Falcons fan, but I have the Colts beating the Falcons here in Atlanta. Christmas Eve. So, hey, go Colts. And they beat them they beat them the last 2 times they played them too, by the way, with different quarterbacks. So, outside of that, if you manage to pick up a win here or there, maybe you get one against Tampa Bay because who's going to be quarterback. Is it going to be? Yeah, is it going to be Trask? Is it going to be Baker Mayfield? But beyond that, like you're asking a lot of this team to produce anything more than 8 wins. And if this team so happens to get 10 wins, like that is house money. You can't talk to me for the rest of the season. Like this is a phenomenal season considering, all the things that this team went through. So to go from 4 to 10 wins would be outstanding. And honestly, 10 wins might win you the division, but they would have to like play phenomenally against the division. And I doubt it's going to happen because you got, 4 division games in your first 6 weeks. It's tough sledding. And it was like that this past season too. Like you had, I think it was 5 division games in the first 7 weeks. Like it's crazy. And no one else in the division has that kind of schedule. So, and right out the gate. Yeah.
That's just criminal, by the way.
Yeah. Well, right out the gate, you got Jacksonville, right?
At home this time, though.
It is at home, which gives you a chance because you can't win in Jacksonville.
Yes.
So Jacksonville at home, Texans away, and then Baltimore the first 3 games. So if you manage to come out with 1 win out of that, like consider yourselves like you've done a good job.
Yeah.
At this point. So that's why I said like expectations, because I've been in a couple Twitter spaces lately, and these are non-Colts fans, of course, but they've got the Colts winning, like 10 games, and I'm like, whoa, what do you see?
Whoa.
What is happening? Like, people are really high on the Colts. They believe in Anthony Richardson, which I get it, I do, but I think this is like, hey, you're seeing all the hype that's coming with Richardson. It's the same hype that's coming out of Texans fans with CJ Stroud. Like they are like through the roof. They got DeMeco Ryans. They got, Slowick. They got, CJ Stroud. They've got weapons now. Dalton Schultz and Tank Dell. And, now they're talking about potentially like D-Hop could come home. Like Texans fans are ecstatic. And then I'm like, yeah, but you got to put all that together. And you got a rookie quarterback and you know what I mean? And a rookie head coach, like a lot. That's why I say a lot of this takes time. And a lot of times teams don't find their rhythm till like week 6. So they don't just come out the gate firing.
Yeah. And then we're also talking about I don't think so. For me personally, outside of like those big splash plays, I don't think any team really like got significantly better to say, oh yeah, they're absolutely winning it. I think people are just giving it to the Jags by default because the Titans, Texans, and the Colts were just they were bad last season. I mean, I don't think the Titans did much else. I think they had 6 draft picks going into here, and I think the most notable name that they signed was Will Levis.
Tajay Spears is
Spears is I think, but Spears is kind of I don't know. It's because the thing is we hear this with running backs like every season when it comes to the Titans, because if it's not Spears, then it was who else, or it was them signing Foreman, and before Foreman it was I think it was Johnson that they had like the thing is. Yeah, they had Adrian Peterson, and he was gonna run for 2,000, even though he's like 35,000 years old. And it's just, and the thing is, like, even the Jags, like giving it to the Jags, in my opinion, is the wrong way to go because of the fact that yes, the Jags every now and then are going to give you a winning season, but they have been able to consistently have winning back-to-back seasons in, I don't know if in ever.
20 years.
I mean, but this is Doug Peterson you're talking about here, like, and this is not Urban Meyer, right? Like, you also have to think, like, the Jags hit a stride in week 9 of last year. At that point, that offense came to life, and Doug Peterson had unlocked whatever it is that Urban Meyer had, like, buried deep in the ground with Trevor Lawrence. And Lawrence comes out playing like he was, an MVP candidate. And a lot of what they did was be resilient. And I think that's what kept them into games. Like they were dead in the water in that Cowboys game, right? Like the Cowboys were handing it to them and they found ways to do it. Same thing with the Chargers game. They found ways to do it. Now, granted, again, you're talking about the Cowboys and Chargers and, blowing games, but the point I'm making is that there was progress being made. You also have Ridley now being in that offense, right? So you're adding, you're adding more. They also picked up Tank Bigsby out of Auburn. To go behind ETN, and if War Eagle, so maybe I'm a little biased because of Tank Bigsby, but I think if Tank can stay consistent, that's a really solid backup running back for ETN. And I think here's the other thing: the Titans don't really know what's going to happen at quarterback, right? Like Ryan Tannehill is the starting quarterback right now because that's the best option they have. You don't know what you have in Malik Willis. You don't even really know what you have in Will Levis. You don't have anybody outside of Treylon Burks who can produce unless it's Chigakongwu, their tight end. I mean, of course, Henry, that wasn't assumed, but like what I'm saying is if you're not named Derrick Henry or you're not named Treylon Burks, like the offense is really almost like non-existent. And so I think for them, they would have to find an offense. And really, that's to be honest with you, that is the key for them. Their defense, the main reason they lost those 7 games was because they were banged up really, really bad across the board. So if they can stay healthy, that defense is top 10 easily. So yeah. I think that they're going to give the Jags a little bit of push if they can find some sort of resemblance of offense that can produce and keep up.
I do want to go back to the hype train real quick because I'm all aboard the Houston hype train. I don't know what it is. I do think Houston has an opportunity to win this division, and it's not because of the Houston hype train and the roster behind it or anything. It's their schedule. I mean, I was looking. If you look at the first 6 weeks of their schedule, they play Baltimore, they play Pittsburgh, Atlanta, New Orleans, Carolina within their first 8 weeks. They have an opportunity to build that camaraderie and then continuity that you're looking for, but they're having to do it against some pretty bad teams. So it's almost like they get a leg up in the opportunity to build that continuity over time. The back in their schedule isn't horrible either. They get Tennessee, they get us, we suck, and then they get Cleveland finish the season. So they're first. You want
Marvin Harrison Jr. That's why you say that.
No. Listen,
yeah. No, you go ahead. You be honest.
Funny, I had us starting 2-7, and actually that's how I have us starting the first 8 weeks is 2-7. My only 2 wins. Listen, I don't even give us beating the Rams. Like I have us beating Jacksonville at home in a very close one, and if we don't, we're going to be 1-8, and that's even better. And then I have Cleveland. Us beating Cleveland. I was losing to the Texans, the Rams, the Ravens, the Jaguars, the Titans, and the Saints. I don't think we're going to beat any of those teams.
I mean, I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you. I would be stunned if you come out of that with 4 wins. Like I would be really like you're in a solid spot if you come out with 4 wins.
Yeah, I think you get to 6. I have us getting to 7, and that's because again, you're hoping that continuity builds. Anthony Richardson plays well. You end the season over 500 at 5-4. Which isn't bad, right? You go into the next season pretty solid. So as much as I have us starting off from Marvin Harrison, but I have us ended up probably trading out of the first round.
See, Megan, Megan, you have to understand. I get you saying that we'd be on the lower end, like 6-11. It's when Harish says it that it really, really grinds my gears because when he says it, it's because there's a motive. And the thing is, the motive right now is Marvin Harrison Jr. And I don't like that personally. Okay, listen. I these are my guys. I love these guys. But the thing is, it's just like I know them, and I know Harish. We've been doing this song and dance for years. We did this with the Sam Darnold situation years ago, and ever since then, I was just like
that guy. That guy.
Yes. Motivation driven. I'm sorry. I'm motivated by my own stories.
I mean, I'll say this. I keep it really realistic all the time, and it crushes people's souls. And I almost kind of get a little bit of a delight out of it because I'm like, okay, listen, I'm always going to be real with you. Now you're probably not going to like what I'm going to say, but I'm always going to be real with you. Sure. Last season, as crazy as it sounds, I predicted the week 3 win against the Chiefs. And I remember getting like Colts fans in my mentions, like, what? We are going to get destroyed by the Chiefs. And Chiefs fans were like, you're crazy. You don't know what you're talking about. So it's just interesting to me to know that like, hey, we were probably going to lose. Now I did have us winning at Tennessee. I didn't see the tie, of course. But to know that, you tie at Tennessee, you get blown out of the water in Jacksonville to come back and beat the Chiefs. Like, it just doesn't make any sense, that's the crazy part of that team, which you were like, what is happening here? But that's also what I keep in mind when I make these predictions, is that there's going to be some win that's either not going to make sense or several losses that are just not going to make sense because this is a new team trying to find its identity. Yeah. And you also have to be realistic with yourself. Like if you're coming out here and saying, yep, we got a brand new team, we got a new quarterback and everything else, we're going to win 12 games. Like I'm going to start asking you, name me these 12 games and then tell me the scores of all of them because I got to hear this for myself. But I think 6 to 8 is realistic. If you wanted me to tell, like, if you want me to tell you like, hey, you get to 10 wins, that's a phenomenal first season. Like that's a really good first season. Yeah. But 6 to 8 is like, okay, all right. Like, cool. Like you've made some progress. And that's really all you want to see really is can the team be competitive? Like I would be okay if the team is still losing games because you kind of expect it. Yeah. But being competitive in games. Like I can't go through seeing a Vikings game like that, a Patriots game like that, a Denver Broncos game like that.
Cowboys game.
Yes, the Cowboys game as well. Like those are the games where I literally was like, I quit. I don't even like it. Those are some of the toughest games I've ever had to cover or write about because I'm like, oh my gosh, there's way too many things happening here for me to reasonably give perspective on. And so I think that's the thing. Like fans just have to keep that in perspective on these things. So yeah, when people say 6 wins, like, yeah, that's probably about right. I'm sure James probably would have said the same thing. 6 wins is right in the wheelhouse.
Yeah.
I think 7, so leave me alone, Chris. Yeah, there's no motivation.
My bad. But you know what? I think the week before we had James on, we kind of like gave like the kind of floor ceiling type predictions.
Yeah.
And I think we were kind of all on the same page where it's just like in terms of like the floor was around like we all had it between like 5 and 6 games for like floor, ceiling possibly being like 10. If it ends up being a good 9 or 10, if it ends up being a good year and things are clicking, but you still run into those things like just being able to be like slightly over that 500 mark. So yeah, that's where we were in terms of that. So I get it. I understand. Like I said, I got to give Harish hell because that's what he does. We even had Leslie. Leslie even said 9 and 8 is what she's guessing.
Nice.
So
it's not bad. It's not bad at all.
So yeah. So you know what? They're gonna kill me. Well, Sam's gonna kill me in terms of time, but you know what? This is great content. So you know what, Sam? Whatever. But no, go ahead, Megan, because I definitely we want to hear more. Go ahead.
No, I mean, I just I think that this is certainly something that you want to keep in mind. Again, like realistic expectations. Chris Ballard also said it as well, so I want something to keep in mind. Oh, Leslie said it. It's he.
I'm sorry. I apologize. I apologize to everybody. Leslie is a boy.
We're getting canceled.
Yes.
But so Chris Ballard has said, hey, I didn't do a good job of setting expectations last season, right? And that was part of the issue is that they always thought, oh, maybe, it was the perception of, hey, we're just a quarterback away or we're only these pieces away. The roster was never at that point. Let's be very quite honest there. But at this point, you have the opportunity to set the right expectations. And I think if you do those alignment of expectations, then yeah, you're going to see people say, yeah, 4 wins is even, not even out of the realm. Like this team is going to go through some struggles. And I think here's the other thing. Colts fans have been lately, I would say that you've only had 4 seasons in recent memory where you didn't make the playoffs. Like that's some pretty solid football where if you're thinking about it compared to other franchises, like the Lions, who's had 31 seasons of not making the playoffs or winning a playoff game, like that sort of torture. And they're dedicated fans, right? Like they are super dedicated fans, but it's like at the first sight of like just instability or like, hey, you're not winning games out of the park that Colts fans are like ready to unravel. And I'm like, the Colts franchise has been really blessed. Like really, I mean, you got Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck back to back. You are winning championship. You're winning AFC, South Division titles. You've got an AFC championship in there, of course. I mean, 10 plus wins on the regular. Like winning the division was a cakewalk for a long time. Like that was the standard. It was like, oh yeah, we're just going to win the division. Then we'll talk about what we do after that. Like that's how it was. Exactly. So to not have that is fans don't know how to operate like that. And so it's still that same mindset, but the team is different. the landscape is different. You got to take that into consideration, which is why I say 6 to 8 wins. Like, keep your expectations. You don't want to be like I was where the beginning of the season where I was like, oh, the floor is 9 wins and the ceiling is 12. And, after 3 weeks, it's like, oh, everything hurts. I hate it here. Because you're just like, what are we going to get out of this team? So I think, you want to be realistic.
Yeah. And I it's actually pretty funny because, even going back then, like, yeah, it's just like, it's been a while since Peyton's been here, but it's just like, we haven't had a coach consistently here in God knows how long. I think the only person that's been here, only people who's been here consistently is Irsay, Thornton, and Wayne. And Thornton and Wayne were players back then, and they're now on the staff. So it's like, you're dealing with a different type of transition. Both Austin, Josh, Harish, myself, we've all said it. The Colts are a very, very spoiled fan base in terms of being able to see greatness for such a long time, and now having to go through adversity and not knowing what to do. It's just like, no, you're going to have to just sit back and see how this process is going to go, because you're going to see what's going to come out of Steichen. Steichen is going to come out and he's going to be able to make his own name. You can't expect him to be Dungy. You can hope that he won't be anywhere as bad as Pagano, but that's what we're going to do. But you know what? I think with that being said, guys, we do have to go, even though, you know what? I want to just go ahead and just book it now. Will you come back on? I'm going to say come training camp time, so we can go ahead and just pick your brain and see what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm definitely going to do my best to get out to training camp as well. So stay tuned for that. So I want to get some, as they say, on the ground content. So
Yes. Thank you so much. And outside of your website, we also have the places where to find you, but you can tell us yourself where to find you on social media, and I'll find all the rest of your content.
Yeah, so it's at the Meghan Hall on Twitter and Instagram. It's Hall About Sports Pod, POD on the tick of the talk, as the kids say. It is also Hall About Sports on Twitter for that. It's HALLABT and then sports. Otherwise, hallaboutsports.com. You'll see my ranting there, my writing, my podcast. You'll see, fun little things that I try to put there, portfolio as well of stuff that I've written that's also not football content. So go take a look at that. And of course, always go to coltswire.usatoday.com for content from me and the entire staff.
All right. Fantastic. And so with that, like I said, we truly do appreciate you, Meghan. We're going to have the guys just go ahead and just walk through, and you're officially a friend of the show. I'm going to say you're awesome. We're definitely going to be leaning on you for a lot of great information. And by the way, I saw you put up that stiff arm video of the sportscaster at the hockey game. So great job on that, because that was hilarious.
Man, that form was impeccable. I had to comment on that. I was like, she was focused, and she was like, absolutely not today.
Yes.
So I can't say that I would have that same sort of like reaction, because I'll be honest with you, I have no poker face whatsoever. So I always tell people, I'm like, if you're with me, you're definitely going to see my true reaction. So the fact that she was still like focused and in the live shot and was just like, nope. Girl, we applaud you. We applaud you a whole lot.
It takes a certain amount of effort and efficiency to not just deviate to nuck a few buck if something like that happens. So absolutely. But like I said, guys, where can the people find you? And then we're gonna go ahead and just say our farewells to the audience. And Meghan, we just want to pick your brain just a little bit more after we get off of here.
Yeah, go for it. We can do that.
All right. So, Austin, where can the people find you on social media?
You can find me on Twitter at CookieAustin2.
All right. Yourself, Josh?
You can find me betting at sports. No.
Jesus. I was bad. It's bad when it's unexpected.
You can find me on Twitter at official Josh Senior.
All right. Harish?
You can find me at the Uncle Gandhi, GHANDI on Twitter and anything else that you can find social media on. except TikTok. I don't post TikToks, but not yet anyway.
Fair.
I spent 3 hours a day on there though.
Gotcha. You can find me at CJ Colts fan. Please make sure that you're following the HorseShoe Mob page on Twitter and on the Tick of the Talks, as us who don't do dances will say. And so with that being said, people, thank you once again. We will see you next week. And in the meantime, be safe. Look at your company policies, make sure that you're not violating anything. And as always, please just remember, during these hot months, make sure you stay hydrated. And as always, Sam just loves Jalen Ramsey.